Okay, if we look back at our list of 9 problems, feeling connected to learning environment, we could absolutely, all 5 of these strategies would help students feel connected, especially the course evals. That's the whole purpose of them. And poor attendance. Of course, it would help with attendance. Anything we could do to help the students feel more connected. So those frequent assessments and evaluations, but also the objectives, the videos. Videos free up time for active learning. Active learning is when they truly learn the material, which better prepares them for the test. Poor writing skills, we could definitely say frequent assessments, because those assessments would many times be writing assignments. But someone could argue that feeling more connected to the learning environment would help them feel more relaxed and help them be more likely to share their thoughts and ideas on paper. And if you hit it from that angle, then you could again say that every one of these strategies would help with that. Unmotivated, definitely all the strategies would help that, because they help them seem more connected. Same with low test scores and success rates. Every one of them would help with that. That's the whole purpose of them, is improve learning. And the same with high withdrawal rates. All 5 strategies definitely. Frequently missed exams, same thing. Very low first test scores, absolutely all of them, and the same with inadequate prerequisite preparation. Contrary to popular belief, it's not always the person that had them before us that's the problem. Now, I realized that in Chem 2. I knew all the students in Chem 1 that had Chem 1. They come to Chem 2, and they start off like, they don't even know the material. So instead of saying, well, who in the world do you have for Chem 1? Because I know who it was me. So it's not a person that had us before us problem. It's just a learning problem. So that was a real, I'm going to say easy solution, but what I did was made a worksheet with all the basic concepts and principles, not details, basic concepts and principles from Chem 1. And it was a sheet with about 12 different problems on it. And then a video that explained step by step each of those problems. In other words, it was just a way to get the student caught up to speed on what we're going to talk about in that course. So any course where you feel like it's a prior preparation problem, you absolutely should have some worksheet and video that allows students to get caught up. Because our next topic that relates to these 5 strategies are action plans. In each of those areas, when you meet with your division, you ought to say, what are we going to do in terms of course evals? What are we going to do with unit objectives, lecture videos, frequent assessments, and early interventions? We need an action plan as a division. And of course, as an individual faculty member, you need that action plan. These action plans must be very specific and measurable. That's going to be the key. And what we don't want to do is just repeatedly state what we're already doing. That's of no value. What we're already doing got us the results that we've already been getting. To get different results, we're going to have to do something different. And just as a note, hope and prayer does not suffice as an action plan. Doesn't mean there's not a purpose for them. It's just not a place for an action plan. So what we need to do, and we've hinted at this before, is the first time you look at data, the first time you read the course evals, go ahead and vent. That's fine. Go ahead and vent and complain, whatever. But when we sit back down, we've got to have a more positive, constructive mindset. And that's why anytime we're in some kind of a group, whether it's a division or a leadership academy or whatever, and we're replying all on email in response to articles or in response to different sessions, those comments must be positive and constructive. These places are not a place for a complaining session. It's not the venue for that. And it's the same when you're asking students to do that. You need to remind them that they need to approach everything with a positive, constructive mindset. And what we want them to do is act logically, not react emotionally. And this is the same thing. When we say them, we talk about students or faculty. Because when a faculty comes up with an action plan, we don't want them reacting emotionally. We want them to step back and act logically. And you'll see how we can tell the difference in a minute. And that allows us to monitor for improvements or effectiveness. The very most difficult thing to do is a self-reflection that requires us to self-reflect and come up with ways to improve. However, it's also the characteristic of a true professional in any field, committed to constant improvement. Now, this is an example of an action plan that shows some comments made, and you'll see that strongly agree is what we're measuring here. And to give you an idea, the average strongly agree for the college is a little over 80% now. So these are extremely low numbers, but this was the first time we'd addressed this issue. The first time we'd used course evals, first time we'd written an action plan. So you can see by looking at the comments, a lot of keep mentioning, keep doing this, keep doing that, keep telling them this. One said, I will use more videos. Okay, now that's a start. Not quantifiable. Okay, so it's not specific enough, nor is it measurable enough. Quite frankly, if we just use one video more than we did the semester before, we would have met that objective. Because I used one more video, that's more videos. So we'd like to challenge ourselves a little more than that. You know, I would like to produce, 10 videos a week, knowing that I can produce 10 or 15 minute videos in a Friday morning easily, just Friday morning. That first comment, I will invite their comments more frequently. Okay, now that's a good start. That's saying something they're going to do differently. Probably could be a little more specific, a little more measurable, and this was another one. Once again, we're looking at those 5 key questions. Are the students engaged? Enthusiasm of the instructor? Interesting? Cares for me as a student? And you can see from some of these that if I read these through, I won't read these out to you, but you can read them yourself. It becomes pretty obvious that this is more of an emotional response. And that's fine. The first time we write these, sometimes that's what you get. But we have to use the same amount of patience with these faculty members as we do with students who are just learning a new skill or behavior. We are very encouraging, and we tell them, hey, you put some thought into this, but you can tell it's way too emotional. Would you take time to go back and write a couple of sentences on what you're going to do different in this area, not what you're already doing? On another action plan, talking about engaging students, said it would use more assignments and more personal stories. Okay, once again, that's a great start. Could be more measurable, could be more specific, and the same with the next one. More activities, more online resources. Utilize Camtasia, which is a screen capturing software, much like I'm using right now. So once again, quantifying those make it much better. How many more activities? Am I going to try one new activity a class period? At least one new activity a class period? Am I going to add at least one more online resource per class period? Quantitative. And concerned about progress of students, announcements weekly. Okay, now we're getting a little more specific. Weekly assignments. Presented a course, interesting. That we'll use real life scenarios. Use simulation lab. Once again, could quantitate that to be a little more specific. Felt that it truly cared. Email students directly to grasp their perceptions regarding class progression and material. Okay, so that's a start. But that's an interesting one on the truly cared, because you could get together as a division, you could come up with 24 different things, very, very simple things, very small things that make a huge difference. And a recommended instructor, instructor will smile. Discuss students every class time and possess a positive attitude each day. Now that's one of those things easy to put on paper. It's much harder to do. I know there's some times in life where it's very trying for the instructor. A lot of times you have to stand outside that class door to get your thoughts together, so to make sure by the time you cross that threshold of that door, your attitude is positive. So may need some strategies on this to make sure that we have that positive attitude. And of course, what will elicit these action plans is given enough data so that somebody can truly assess their standings. If I look at the top portion there, it says divisional average 52.9. Well, that's the response rate for the course evals. Our goal was 75%. Standard was 67%. But that says what the average. So if you're instructor G and you have a 48.7, you realize you're not even average. So that's not good. But you might not know that if you didn't have all this other data to go with. Now you'll notice on G, that instructor G, their overall faculty average on the 5 questions was 56.7, by far the lowest in the division. So there's perception problem in that class. And it's probably one of those classes that have a little more classroom management issues than others. Teacher can't get away with quite as much. Students want to call their hand on just about everything. And we separate those out full-time and adjunct because a lot of time adjunct numbers can be significantly different than full-time, which means we need to provide a lot more interventions for those adjunct faculty. But our point is it's listed high to low because the whole purpose in putting out data is to inspire and facilitate action. If the data doesn't lead to action, and that's why we called it data-driven action, then what use was it? So sometimes those simple little quotes make a big difference. There's much less of this drama when you have a group of people that are focused on the same mission, laser focused on that same mission of providing a high quality education to millions of often underserved students. And that's what the AACC, American Associated Community Colleges, says is our mission as a community college. Here's the problem. We can't provide a high quality education using low quality instructional strategies. And we sure can't provide a high quality education to underserved students using low quality instructional strategies. Low quality instructional strategies lead to success for those students who are able to overcome and compensate for those least effective strategies. So those 5 strategies we mentioned are listed here again just as an overview. Those course evals, the unit objective, lecture videos, frequent low-stakes assessments, early intrusive interventions. You get together the department, you formulate an action plan for each one of these, and watch how it transforms the learning environment for both you and the students. Because helping students learn is the whole key to success. We got to help them feel in control. Anything that helps them feel in control, like clear expectations, frequent assessments, video lectures. It reminded me of in high school, first 5 years I taught in high school, that observed 14 times unannounced in high school. I mean, they knew where they're going to keep you around after that first year. And one of the times I was being observed after class, the observer said, I didn't have a problem with anything you're doing. He said, but you can't just change your lesson plan just because you're being observed. And I didn't. Said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Because it got down to about the last 15 minutes of class, and I could tell I was losing the students. They just weren't with me. So what I said is, if you can hang with me for the next 7 minutes, if you can hang with me, I'll give you the last 7 to 10 minutes of class to work on your homework. So conceivably, you could knock out your homework before you leave today. Well, that's what he was referring to. However, when I pointed him to the lesson plan, he saw that right there on the lesson plan, it said the last 10 minutes of class would be used to work on this assignment. So sometimes what we tell students is what we need to tell them to keep them motivated, to help them feel like they're in control, to engage them more in the discussion. Help them see how it matters in their lives. That's our job as a content expert, is to find out how it matters in their lives. And to do that, we have to know about their lives. That's why writing assignments are so important. We talk about writing assignments and how it improves their writing. It improves their critical thinking. What we don't talk about is how it can totally transform how we look at those students, the empathy we have for those students. Not sympathy. Sympathy doesn't require any effort at all. Empathy requires personal effort. I have to try to put myself in the shoes of those students. I have to put myself in their position. And that's why we can make it more relevant. Once we understand how it matters in their lives, once we understand what their misconceptions are, we can make it more relevant. It's just like a music appreciation. You may say, well, our problem with our students is they just don't understand good classical music. Well, maybe the problem is we haven't figured out how to connect what they do appreciate to what we want them to appreciate. And that's what all great teachers have figured out. So we gotta expect to encounter some emotions. We have to take those serious. But it depends on what it is. I've had teachers say, well, I implemented a discussion, a group discussion. and students said they didn't like it. I said, well, what'd you do? She said, well, I'll never do that again. I said, you mean just because students didn't like it, you're not going to do it again? I said, you better poll them. I bet they don't like final exams either. I bet they don't like a lot of stuff going on in class you might get rid of. That's why when MIT went to, on their physics classes, they condensed them. Instead of the large lecture halls, they did away with large lecture halls. And this is back in 2008, 10 years ago. They did away with those and went to the smaller classes where they could get more active learning going on. And they said after initial resistance of the students, the failure rate was cut in half. Because they were reiterating that students are always going to resist when they're forced to be involved in their learning, especially when they've been sitting back being passive for all these years. So those course evals and interventions, they help with that emotion. It helps us get an insight into what that student's thinking. So the only wrong answer in response to any issue or problem that affects student learning is to say we're doing nothing. So the question in response to this workshop be, what do you plan to do in response to this? What specifically are you going to change about what you do?